Story 1. The Whistling in the Woods. After my divorce, I moved to a small town called Chatham in the state of Alabama. I had nowhere else to go but my parents' place. So I moved into my grandfather's old house. He passed away a few years ago and left it to the family. The house was about a 10-minute drive from town, sitting on more than 10 acres of land, surrounded by dense forest. The air was extremely quiet here. I thought I'd enjoy that. The house was old, with worn wooden floors, creaky doors, and always cold, no matter the outside temperature. But since it was free and I didn't have a better option, I stayed. The first few nights were uneventful. I cleaned, unpacked my things, and sat on the porch each evening with a beer, enjoying the silence. No traffic noise, just the wind in the trees, and occasionally the distant call of an owl. But then, the strange sound began. The first time I heard it was on the 7th night. I had just laid down around midnight, eyes heavy, when a whistling sound came from outside. It wasn't a tune I recognized, just a distorted, slow, off-key melody. It sounded like someone walking through the woods behind the house, whistling as they moved. I felt uneasy, but tried to convince myself it was just a lost hunter or a drunk neighbor. However, the next night, the sound came again, same time, same eerie melody, but this time louder. Closer. I jumped up, turned on the porch light. Nothing. I grabbed a flashlight and checked the yard. No footprints. No movement. Only the whistling fading into the woods. It happened every night after that, precisely at 1:17 a.m. I started to suspect someone was playing a prank on me. Maybe they knew I lived here alone. I decided to call the sheriff's office. A few days later, an older deputy, whom I'll call Deputy H, came out to meet me. When I told him the story, he grew quiet. Then he said, "Your grandfather used to call us about the same thing. He said every spring, someone would whistle around the house at night. We never found anyone. He told me to keep my doors locked and not go outside after dark. I began triple-checking every door and window at night. Sometimes I even wedged a chair under the doorknob. Still, the whistling kept getting closer each night. One night, I heard it right behind the shed. Another night, it came from the front porch, right outside the door. 3 long whistles, then silence. The next night, it echoed from beneath the floor. I swear it came through the vent like someone was underneath the house. I couldn't sleep that night. The next morning, I went up to the attic to see what my grandfather had left behind. I found a box full of journals. He had written everything in great detail. He described how the whistling came every spring for more than 10 years. He used to sit up all night with a rifle pointed at the door. It only started after Grandma died when he was living alone. He showed the journals to Deputy H. He read through them and looked deeply concerned. He warned me, "If you don't know exactly who's at your door, don't ever open it." That night, I sat on the couch with my handgun on my lap. At exactly 1:17 a.m., the whistling began again. But this time, it wasn't from outside. It was coming from the hallway. I froze. I stood up, gun raised, and shouted, "Who's there?" The whistling stopped. I walked down the hallway, no one. I didn't sleep that night, and after that, everything went quiet. 2 nights passed with nothing strange. I began to hope it was over. On the 3rd night, I went to bed early and left the hallway light on. At exactly 1:17 a.m., I woke up not from the whistling. This time it was knocking. 3 slow knocks from the back door, then silence. I lay still, listening. Moments later, the hallway floor creaked. Someone was walking outside my room. The hallway light flicked off. I grabbed my gun, heart pounding, and stepped out. At the end of the hallway, I saw someone standing. They were dressed in black, with a pale white face. Motionless, staring at me. My hands shook as I raised the gun. I shouted, "Don't move." The figure slowly turned, as if to run. I yelled, "Stop!" and they suddenly sprinted down the hallway and out the front door. I chased after them, firing a shot into the dark. Then I locked every door and drove through the night to my parents' house in another state. Story 2. The mint field that didn't exist. I'm currently 16 years old and living in the city, but I spent the first 8 years of my life in the countryside, a peaceful, tiny place. The population was only about 90 people, small enough that almost everyone knew each other. My friends, and I even memorized each family's car plates and knew exactly who they belonged to. On one scorching summer day, my best friend, let's call him Julian, and I were parched and seriously craving Coca-Cola. Back then, soda was really cheap at small rural shops. We only needed to scrape together a few coins to get 2 cold cans. Right then, an old woman called us over from her house. She said her birthday was coming up and she planned to make mint tea for everyone, but she'd run out of mint leaves. She told us that if we filled up 2 plastic bags with mint, she'd reward us with as many cans of soda as we wanted. It sounded like a sweet deal. I didn't want to ask my parents for money, so I immediately agreed. Julian was excited too. So, we set out into the blistering heat, our shirts soaked with sweat. We tried hard, but after hours, we had only half filled 1 bag. We started feeling discouraged, realizing we probably wouldn't finish the task before nightfall. Still, we kept going, hoping we might magically find a field full of mint plants. That's when 2 strangers approached us. I remember them clearly tall, maybe around 5 feet 7 inches, like giants to a 7-year-old like me. Both were dressed in black, wearing hoodies pulled over their heads, tight pants, and neither looked older than 17. They had childish, friendly voices, but the questions they asked made Julian start to look nervous. One of them asked, "Are you 2 out here alone?" Julian glanced at me, then subtly made a hand gesture, probably trying to tell me to stay away from them. But I didn't understand sign language at all, so I just kept chatting cheerfully. I replied, "Yeah, we're looking for mint leaves." I'm not sure, but I think I saw one of them smile at that. One of the guys leaned down and gently patted my head. Julian immediately stepped forward and pulled me back. His eyes were serious, even a little panicked. Julian asked, "Who are your parents?" A common question in our village, where new faces and newborns were rare. It was a way to identify family lines. But the 2 guys didn't answer. They dodged the question and turned their attention back to me. Actually, one of them said, "We know where there's a whole mint field. See that hill over there? We can take you there and help fill your bags." Julian and I had played hide and seek in those woods. We knew for a fact there was no mint field, just corn, grapes, and a few scattered watermelons. But I was still too naive to sense any danger. I nodded eagerly and pulled Julian's arm to follow them. We walked farther and farther from the village, deeper into the woods. I could feel Julian's hand start to tremble. That's when I began to feel a chill down my spine. The village was completely out of sight. All we could see ahead were trees and clearly no mint. I asked, "Are we close?" One of them simply said, "You'll see soon." I started sweating again, but now from fear. I deliberately slowed down. My gut was screaming at me that something terrible was about to happen. But strangely, I felt like I couldn't stop walking, like something was forcing me to keep moving. I was certain that if either of us turned around and ran, things would get very dangerous. Julian leaned quietly toward my ear and whispered tensely, "Something's not right. Run." Right after that, he grabbed my hand and we bolted downhill at full speed. He didn't let go of my hand for a second. I ran like my life depended on it, and maybe it really did. Behind us, I heard them cursing, followed by the sound of footsteps chasing us. I was crying loudly in fear, but I didn't dare stop. I still don't know how I managed to run nearly 2 kilometers back to the village without stopping, without falling once. The old woman who had asked us to collect the mint saw us come back in tears and sweat. Our faces were pale, as if all the blood had drained away. When we told her what happened, she hugged us tightly and gave us some chocolate to calm down. Julian recounted everything because I couldn't say a word. After hearing all, she sighed and scolded Julian. "How foolish of you. Why would you lie and say you didn't want to follow them, blaming it on your friend?" After that incident, Julian was grounded for a whole month. As for me, it took a very long time to overcome that fear. Even now, I still don't know who those 2 men were or what they intended to do to us. But when I look back, I shudder. If it weren't for Julian, who is now my boyfriend, I don't even want to imagine. Story 3. The stranger outside the window. When I was little, my parents worked a lot. Both of them juggled two jobs to support me and my brother Cameron. Because of their busy schedules, they were rarely home and had to hire a babysitter through a website. The one they chose was a young white girl, around her early 20s, named Michelle. For 4 to 5 months, Michelle came to our house every day to look after us. I was 7 years old at the time, and Cameron was 8. We both adored Michelle. She was young, polite, and energetic, totally different from the grumpy older babysitters. With her around, we were always free to play and laugh. Both Cameron and I were doing online schooling at home because our parents thought public school would be too harsh for us. Michelle became an essential part of our daily life. As summer approached, my parents told Michelle she should take a break and enjoy her vacation. They were deeply thankful for everything she had done for our family, but they also decided not to hire another sitter for the summer. Instead, they would send Cameron and me to stay with our grandparents in the countryside of Texas, quite far from our home in Oklahoma. That weekend, we started the trip. I remember it was a long and tiring journey. Eventually, we arrived at a small cabin-like house, sitting in the middle of a vast field surrounded by woods. Behind the house was a barn area with animals, cows, goats, chickens, and all kinds of fun things. As soon as we arrived, Grandpa eagerly took Cameron and me on a tour while our parents stayed inside, chatting with Grandma. That evening was lovely. We played with Cora, Grandma and Grandpa's dog, had a delicious homemade dinner, and went to bed. Cameron and I shared a room with a bunk bed and a TV. Our parents' room was right next door. They quickly fell asleep, exhausted from the long drive, since they had to return to work on Monday. Cameron and I stayed up a bit later, watching cartoons. Around 2 a.m., I started feeling sleepy, and we dozed off, leaving the TV on. Suddenly, I was awakened by the sound of footsteps outside the window. Heavy footsteps, clearly those of an adult, but the window had curtains, so I couldn't see anything. Cameron was still fast asleep, the TV still humming softly. I kept listening, and then I heard a faint rattling sound, like someone trying to open the window. Then came a soft groaning noise. Terrified, I ran to my parents' room and woke them up. They thought I was imagining things, but still went out to check. They found nothing, so they assumed it was just an animal in the night. After all, we were out in the countryside. Could have been a cat or a raccoon. I tried to fall asleep again. It took me about 15 minutes to finally doze off. The next morning, I was woken by the smell of breakfast Grandma cooking something amazing. While my parents packed up to return home, we all sat down for breakfast and said our goodbyes. After they left, Grandpa took Cameron and me out to feed the animals. We brought Cora along. I asked to hold the leash, and Grandpa agreed. As we walked, I noticed that every few steps, I had to tug Cora to get her moving. Eventually, I looked down and realized she was staring intensely into the woods. Curious, I looked in the same direction and froze. In the middle of the forest, just behind a large tree trunk, there was a man standing and watching us. He was dressed in all black, but I could clearly see he was facing us. One hand rested on the tree, as if he was lurking, while his whole body leaned in our direction. I panicked. I ran over to Grandpa and told him what I saw. He and Cameron came running, but when I turned back, the man was gone, as if he had never been there. I expected to see him running off, but no movement, no noise, no trace. I told Grandpa about the footsteps and groaning sound from the night before. His face grew serious, but all he said was maybe it was a deer, and I just got too spooked. That afternoon, we returned to a normal routine, playing in the water hose, watching movies, and having dinner with Grandma. She cooked a fantastic meal, and I went to bed full and happy. After a quick shower, I joined Cameron back in a room, watched a few cartoon episodes, and fell asleep. Around 1 a.m., I was woken again, but not by footsteps this time. It was humming. Someone was humming the theme song from Cyber Chase, the cartoon we had been watching. I knew it wasn't the wind or an animal. I shouted, "Grandpa!" The humming stopped immediately. After a few seconds of silence, a voice spoke. "Hey, Grandpa, come out here. I want to show you something cool." I quickly slipped on my shoes and stepped outside. There were no lights, but the night sky was full of stars. I walked toward the window and saw Grandpa standing there, reaching out his hand for me to grab. I took his hand, and he started leading me toward the barn. I tried to talk to him, asked where we were going, but he didn't answer. Something felt wrong. Why was Grandpa outside at 1 a.m.? Why was he wearing a hoodie? And why did his hand feel off? I looked closer and realized it wasn't Grandpa's hand at all. It was the hand of a younger person, rougher. I tried to pull away, but the man gripped tighter. I kept calm, tried not to show I was scared. My heart was pounding. Then I looked behind him and noticed something sticking out of his waistband. A handle, a wooden axe handle. Panic hit me hard. At that moment, I heard Grandpa's Rael voice shouting from the house. The man holding my hand turned to look toward the sound. That was my chance. I yanked my hand back and stepped away. The man stood still for a few seconds, then suddenly turned and sprinted into the woods. I screamed for help and ran back to the house. While I got inside, Grandpa held me tight. Grandma was on the phone, calling the police. They arrived that same night. After searching the area, they found the man hiding in a ditch nearby. In the ditch, they also found some tools he had stolen from the barn, and most disturbingly, the axe tucked into his belt. After the investigation, they discovered the man was Michelle's ex-boyfriend, the babysitter who used to take care of us. I'll call him Dave. Dave confessed that he had been watching me and planned to kidnap me. He wanted to use me to force Michelle to come back to him because he knew how much she cared about me. He said he wouldn't have hurt me, but obviously, no one believed that. A week later, my parents came to pick up Cameron and me. They found new jobs so they could spend more time with us. Michelle also left her babysitting job. I understood why. I'll be forever grateful to my grandpa for waking up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom and unknowingly saving me from Twisted Man. Even now, more than 20 years later, I still shiver when I think about what could have happened that night.